Hello, Claire with you today. I'm here to make a lovely slimline card using the brand new released dies from Lisa Horton. Lisa has just released a set of 4 dies in this collection. It's called the Slim Collection, and they actually create these lovely DL or slimline cards which are really on trend at the moment. I have just one of the die sets from the collection of 4. There are 2 others with decorative edges, plus one other set which has the nested dies. So this rectangle shape, the slimline shape, decreases down, and that will be really useful for your mat and layering. Also within this collection, as well as stamps, Lisa has also released and designed these amazing stencils. I have 2 here. The card that I will be demoing today, or the one that this card here for you, I'm actually using this. It's like the mandala style stencil. Just to show you something different, I'll be using this flower stencil for you today. But this set of stencils actually comes as a set of 4, and these are the other 2 here as well. So you have the geometric, the regular shape. So I can't wait to use these either. This is an amazing one. I really love circles to use, so I should be using this one at a later date. So this is the card I'll be making for you today. Simple enough in its design, but there's just a few techniques that I wanted to show you, just to how to get the different effects. It uses pretty much all the dies in the set, and I just wanted to show you how beautiful these stencils are too. So we shall get going with this. Okay, I've already done all the die cutting in advance. You don't need to see me do that. So to start with, what I've done, I've used the 2 of the larger dies from this set. I've used the shaped die and the nested rectangle die in the centre of that to actually cut this shape out. Now I've used white card because I want to colour tint this, because I want to keep control of the colours that I'm using. And if you notice, I'm actually keeping this within the cardstock sheet that I cut this from. Now I shall bring in the stencil, because I'm going to be creating this outer layer at the top here. And if I lay this stencil over the top here, you can see what a brilliant job Lisa has made of actually matching all of these products together. So you have a complete collection to make yourself a card. So it may sound obvious, but when a designer has this much attention to detail, it makes our lives as makers so much easier. So initially, what I want to do is just create this top layer with a palish sort of colour. So I should be using the pumice stone in the Distress Oxide. And the reason why I want to keep this within the outside cardstock is because I also want to colour tint the frame around the outside as well to match. As with all the stencils that I use, I tend not to tape my stencil down. If that's something that will make this stenciling easier for you, then by all means do that. The reason why I wanted to keep this within the outer cardstock is because I wanted to colour tint this frame, and if I were to do that on its own, because of the nature of the card that I'm using and the size of this, it would be too flimsy. So if I actually keep this within the frame, you can see I actually have some sort of rigidity. You can see there that just sort of flicks if I'm not careful. But in doing that also, I'm actually going through the design of the stencil too. Now I want to have this quite pale. Depending on the colour combinations that you use, you could either use a pale blue or a pale pink, and So I'm just going to go around and make sure I colour tint this frame around the outside too. Now, as with all of Lisa's stencils, they are so easy to use. They're a brilliant weight mylar. Lisa and Danny actually cut them themselves on site, so you'll know you're getting fabulous quality. They're so easy to use. Now, the reason why this is flicking is because I'm being a little bit heavy-handed. So there we are. If we just hold that down, and we can get that ink spreading around all the frame, just blending that round, because I want this outer frame to actually coordinate with this stencil colour in the centre here. You can of course use coloured cardstock with this, if that's your preference. It's very rare actually that I use coloured cardstock. Say I like to have the control and the coordination of the colour with the inks that I use. So we've got that tinted, so that means I can take away the outer frame. I don't need that anymore. And I can remove the stencil, and you can see that beautiful design around the outside. And I'm hoping now you can see why I kept this outer frame here, because that's a really nice contrast against the white of the rest of the layer there. Now, to actually create these two layers, what you do, you run your die through your die machine, both of these dies together, and this is what creates this outer frame. To get this layer, all you do is just use this die cut, and this gives you the wonderful stitched edged around the outside as well, and that gives you the solid piece of card to work on. So I'm just going to put this to one side at the moment. We will come back to that later. And I shall bring in a second layer, again just cut with the large rectangle die we have there, and I shall be using the stencil again, but this time I'm going to be using a selection of colours so we can actually create this bold layer underneath here. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this is because when I layer up these two layers together, the patterns will actually match each other. So this time I shall come in with my colours, and this is where I want to go bold this time. So we'll just line that up, and we shall come in with some yellow. Again, I'm using a Distress Oxide because it just gives that huge bold pop of colour, which is really what I want. I just want that colour to be in your face. So we're going to have a good selection of colours. So we have some pink and we'll have some yellow, and if we blend the two together, then we start getting that that fourth colour in when the pink and the yellow blend. So the colours I'm using, the yellow is the Mustard Seed. I'm using Twisted Citron, which is this green colour, which is one of my favourites, I must say. And then I'm using the Picked Raspberry as well, which adds that massive pop of pink. So I shall just keep on blending these colours just randomly, and I'm not too fussed if the colours don't blend together. We just want to have a nice random selection of colour. We should go into the centre there. It might be quite nice to actually blend some of the yellow over the pink there, so that gives us that orange layer too, which adds another element into our design. We should just perhaps pop a little bit of pink in the centre there. Now, as we pull that away, you can see how beautiful that stencil is. I mean, that in itself, just on a card with a quick sentiment on the top, would brighten anybody's day. It's so colourful, it's so cheery, especially on a sunny day like we have today. Right, now you'll notice in the die set that we have the Aperture Dies in the centre. Now I want to make use of those now, and what I shall be doing is just using the inner die of each of these apertures initially to create 3 apertures on the front of this card. And what I would do, I would just line these dies up like this, space them evenly, and I would run that through my die cutting machine. And what that will give me is the paler stenciled layer with the 3 apertures down the centre. Now you can see the advantage now of using the same layer and the stencil in the same position. So when we layer this over the top, the design is complete again, but the apertures obviously are showing the brighter colour through. But if you can see how the pattern matches through the aperture there, and I think that's what's absolutely perfect when you have a coordinating system like this, when you have the dies and the stencils that match so perfectly. And I just really loved that combination. I just wanted to have the pop of colour showing through. Now to highlight those pops of colour through the window there, I wanted to create the frames for the apertures. To do this, I just run them, I'll just show you with the dies. This is when I actually run both of the Aperture Dies through the die cutting machine at the same time, and this is what creates the frame. So if you run both dies through the machine, then you end up with like the pairs of apertures that we have here. Now obviously we're not going to need the centre layers, we can keep those for another project later on. And obviously if you've die cut them from the stenciled layer, these would actually be stenciled also. What I've done, the ones that I've made, that I've kept from the demo there, I've put to one side, and I'll show you a card that I've made with those just a little later. So this is a card that you can actually use everything from, and you can possibly get 2 cards from it too. So this technique actually is really nice to batch make cards. Now you'll see that these apertures will fit over the front beautifully here. I say everything that Lisa does, because she's so professional and so precise in her designing, that everything, you have the confidence that everything will fit just perfectly. That looks good as it is, but obviously I think I want to just highlight these apertures a little bit more, and I will just colour tint these apertures in the same way as I did the coloured layer underneath. So I shall just go with the 2 colours this time. So I shall just use the yellow and the pink, and I shall come in with my blending tool, and just randomly and gently I shall just add some colour to these frames. Again, you can use coloured card for this. It depends entirely on the effect that you want and the design. I just quite like, as I say, you having the control of the colour that I use. So I shall be blending the ink onto that, and you can see, but by using the yellow and the pink together, you do get this 3rd colour sort of coming into the design with the orange there as the 2 colours merge. Okay, so we have lovely bold frames there, and I'm just going to wipe my mat. Okay. Now we can see that this card is really coming together, and those apertures are really highlighted by these amazingly bright colours. So I'm just going to glue those into place. Okay, and now I'm just using a wet glue here. You need very little actually, so those of you who perhaps are less comfortable using a wet glue, I would definitely say that less is more. If you've got the confidence that you're using a good white PVC glue, just use a tiny little bit, because it does grab and it holds really well, and you don't get that wrinkling or the buckling of the paper or the card stock either. I know a Cosmic Shimmer is a really good glue. People have their different preferences. I use a Nouveau one here, but it is really what you get comfortable with using and have the confidence with using. So there we are. We have our layer with our apertures attached. Now I shall actually bring in the card, the DL card. I'm using a craft card. You can buy card blanks like this. I tend to make mine from an A4 piece of card, which is the width of an A4 piece of paper. So you don't need to cut that down. But when you fold that in half, the card should actually measure the width of an A4, which is about 20 centimetres by 10 centimetres. So if you're cutting it, you're cutting a length from an A4 piece of 20 centimetres, then obviously folding that in half. Now if we start assembling the card, we can actually add this coloured layer to the base, like so, and we'll put this one on first because I find it easier to centre this larger piece like that. Then I can bring in my frame, the one that I colour tinted earlier, and although it's very subtle, there is a slight difference with the white and the colour of the frame there. Now obviously if you wanted to make this the same colour as the frames around the outside, or use a piece of colour card, then that would also work just as well. But I really wanted the boldness of this bottom layer of the stencil to actually be the main feature, so I wanted to keep the rest of the details quite subtle around the outside. So because this is from the same die set, this actually matches perfectly around the outside, which again is just a huge boost when you're wanting to make quick cards, especially when you don't really need to think of it. If you've got the confidence in the tools that you're using, your card and your design comes together so quick. Now it's actually worth saying that the 3 other die sets in this collection are all designed in exactly the same way. All that changes is the design of the frames around the outside. If you are lucky enough to have all 3 sets, or perhaps 2 of the sets, the frames and the dies themselves interchange. So if you wanted to have 3 different designs of the apertures for the frame, the frames for the apertures, then you'd be able to do that, because as I say, Lisa has actually added that attention to detail, when that gives us the confidence to make amazing cards. Now I want to layer this on the top here, and you can see now how this is coming together. We can see how the design features of the stencil actually flow from one to another. So we've got the paler to the bold on the inside, and say it's highlighted by these wonderful frames. Just to add a bit of detail to this, I'm not going to lay this flat. I'm actually going to add some 3D foam. So I've already got these pre-cut, luckily, so I can add these to the centre. Now it's worth actually noting at this stage that if you wanted to make a shaker card in this style, this would actually work as well. All that you'd need to do is, before adding this 3D foam to this layer, you would need to add some acetate. So you're actually creating a window, and each of the 3 pieces of 3D foam would actually need to meet, so you don't have any sort of gaps in between, because obviously the glitter or the shaker bits that you put inside will fall out. But I'm not creating the shaker today, and I shall just take those pieces off. we can layer this over the top like so. So that creates our dimension of the card. And I just love actually the chalkiness of the Distress Oxides. I think it just, alongside the craft card, I think that just works really well. And you can see that I've used the two different stencils, but both designs are just as effective. Now to create the wording here, I can take a piece of white cardstock, and what I want to do is keep it in line with the rest of the design. I'm actually bringing the pumice stone. So on white cardstock I shall just blend some of this ink onto the cardstock. So this is actually going to match the frame around the outside and the colour of the stencil on the top there. As I say, it's all about the coordination. So although it's a very subtle colour, I think it just works really well. And I shall bring in another new set of Lisa's. It's the craft stamps with the companion dies. Now these are just brilliant. I'll just take these out. We have a set of stamps here. Let's just put them, move that out of the way so you can see that. We have the set of stamps, which are a really nice large size. And we also have all the dies that will actually cut these out for you, so it makes life so much easier. Just one thing to note, that I've actually put my dies onto a magnetic sheet. Yours will come sort of all attached together, but they come in this brand new packaging now. These lovely cardboard envelopes, which means that when you put everything away, everything is stored securely in Lisa's brand new packaging. So that was really excited to see those come in. Now, to choose the wording, I think I'll just go with a hello on this card. So I shall take my stamp, and you can see this is a really lovely large size stamp, and I shall get my acrylic block. Now I'm going to use a VersaFine black over the top of the Distress Oxide here. And because this Distress Oxide takes a while to dry, you can heat set it if you want, but if I stamp this over the top of this black, it will actually make this VersaFine ink look a little bit chalky as well, which I actually really like. It doesn't have the boldness of the black usually, which is why I usually go for the VersaFine, strangely. I just really like, say, it just mutes it down a little bit, and you can see now if I actually put the die over the top how that fits perfectly. So if I just cut this down, bear with me. I can bring in my small die cutting machine. Actually, that's the beauty of these small dies as well, is that they do actually fit through some of the smaller machines. And that's something that, for me particularly, is really appealing. Okay, just run that through. And you may have noticed that the colour of the design of the dies now has changed, but it hasn't affected the quality at all. If anything, they cut just as well, and you can see just how quick and precise that was running through the die machine just once. So I shall stick that on there. Now this is just a super quick card. I mean, obviously these apertures lend themselves to all sorts of different designs. If you had some of the other companion stamp sets that Lisa has just released, then obviously you could put tiny little characters in here. You could add shaker elements. Let's say there's so many different design choices, but just for a quick card, just to show you the beauty of how the stencils and the apertures work together, I think that is just a really nice quick design and a lovely card just to say hello to somebody and send. Now, I did say that once you cut out all these apertures, you're left with these smaller pieces, which again are so useful in themselves that they would obviously have designs stenciled on them. And what I did do, I put those designs together, you can see here, and actually cut a couple more and just created another really simple card. Again, I've mixed and matched the two different designs of the stencils. I've added one of the sentiments from the brand new stamp and die set that I've just shown you here. And also a couple of dies from another set, dies from this set, from the Little Acorn set, which was also from the brand new release. So we have some just sprigs of leaves, which to me are just so useful. These will actually probably appear on many of my cards from now. But that again is just a really quick, simple card using everything that comes from these two cards here. So nothing is wasted. It's really ideal to make batch cards, and I just think they're really sort of nice and elegant. So I hope I've shown you a few ideas of how you can use the brand new dies and stencils from Lisa. And I look forward to coming back to you with more ideas.